The mother of one of Kenyelle Brown's alleged victims wants answers.
The search for one man who may be connected to 5 murders in Metro Detroit. This is Kenyelle Brown, a man police want to get off the streets.
And U.S. Attorney Matthew Snyder acknowledges that for a period of time, Brown was a law enforcement informant. And he's
You come to my house and you tell me why my son was murdered by a man that was working for you. Then I let it rest.
Today, we're going to unravel the twisted tale of Kenyelle Brown, a Detroit drug dealer who somehow managed to become a DEA informant and a serial killer. Buckle up, because this one's a wild ride. Our story begins with Kenyelle Brown, a 40-year-old man from Detroit with a criminal record that could rival War and Peace in length. Brown had been arrested for everything from carrying concealed weapons to fleeing from police officers and even causing death while evading authorities. You'd think with a rap sheet like that, he'd be locked up tighter than Fort Knox. But oh no, Brown had a trick up his sleeve. In a move that can only be described as a cosmic joke, Brown was released from federal custody on October 29th, despite multiple probation violations. How, you ask? Well, it turns out some unidentified federal agency thought it would be a brilliant idea to use Brown as an informant for the Detroit Police Department and the DEA in a joint task force. What could possibly go wrong? Apparently a lot. Brown was about as useful as a chocolate teapot when it came to providing valuable information. He managed to complete one measly operation, which turned out to be a colossal failure. The powers that be paid him a paltry $150 for his supposed insider knowledge on gang activity and drugs in southwest Detroit, but it led to absolutely nothing. No arrests, no busts, just a waste of time and money. But wait, it gets better. While working as an informant, Brown allegedly decided to go on a killing spree, murdering 6 innocent people over the course of 6 weeks. It's like he woke up one morning and thought, you know what? Being an informant is boring. I think I'll try my hand at being a serial killer instead.
The search for one man who may be connected to 5 murders in Metro Detroit. This is Kenyelle Brown, a man police want to get off the streets.
Investigators believe he's connected to 3 murders in River Rouge and 2 in Detroit. The latest happened overnight on Detroit's east side. A man was found shot to death in a vacant home on Minnesota near John R. Detroit police are calling Brown a person of interest. Coco McAvoy is live downtown outside of the U.S. Marshal's office. And Coco, what do we know about this man?
So the U.S. Marshals say he's from the Downriver area. They also say that he is armed and dangerous, but he's able to befriend people, so they want him in custody as soon as possible.
This is a situation where every day he's out there, somebody's at risk.
U.S. Marshal Aaron Garcia is part of the team searching high and low for Kenyelle Brown.
We have the U.S. Marshals, ATF, we have a task force assembled working 24/7, Detroit Police Department, Michigan State Police. We have a joint task force with several agencies working around the clock.
That's because Brown is either the suspect or a person of interest in connection to 5 different homicides in River Rouge and Detroit.
It's somebody who's obviously on some kind of crime spree. We need to stop it.
Garcia says Brown follows the same M.O.
We know that he's befriending people, you know, at gas stations, you know, on the street, and you know, he don't really have money. He has a weapon on him. He's violent.
But still, Garcia says people are taking Brown in to hide him from the authorities.
They're allowing him into their houses, and then we get another situation that we're looking at now as a person of interest.
Brown has ties to River Rouge and Ecorse, but has been spotted in Detroit and Highland Park too.
Who knows where he's at now, where he's moving to.
The U.S. Marshals are offering a $10,000 reward for any information leading to Kenyelle Brown's arrest. And if you see Brown, of course, do not approach him, but make sure to call police. Back to you.
Yeah, and Coco, you mentioned that the authorities think that people are letting Brown stay with them in their homes. Do they think he might be paying people for that?
So the U.S. Marshals say that he does not have any money, but they believe that he's able to somehow convince people to let them stay in their homes. But they have a message for those people. They want to make sure that they know that they will, too, be charged in this.
All right. Thank you, Coco.
Detroit Police Chief James Craig claims that they had no idea about Brown's violent past, or they would have never brought him on as an informant. Craig blamed miscommunication during Brown's transfer from the ATF to the DPD DEA task force, stating that they were not informed about his extensive history of probation violations. It's like playing a game of telephone, but with people's lives at stake.
What I'm getting now preliminarily is that our DPD officer assigned to that task force was unaware of these failures or violations of his release. Unaware. Again, had we known, this is not a person we would have wanted to use.
Chief Craig is talking about Brown's criminal history that includes gun and drug crimes and a messy list of probation violations that has a lot of people asking if he should have been in prison instead of free and listed as an informant until...
Now, here's where the plot thickens. It turns out that U.S. District Judge Bernard Friedman was the one who released Brown from federal custody at the request of some mysterious federal law enforcement agency. The judge even had the audacity to give Brown a little motivational speech telling him to stay out of trouble and that he was entitled to a break. Well, I guess we can all see how well that worked out. As the bodies began to pile up, authorities finally started to connect the dots. They realized that maybe, just maybe, Brown wasn't the model informant they thought he was. On February 3rd, they deactivated him after learning he was a suspect in a double homicide. Talk about closing the barn door after the horse has bolted. Brown's alleged victims were a diverse group, including Lauren Harrington, Kimberly Green, Dorian Patterson, Garcias Woodyard, Amir Thaxton, and Eugene Jennings. Each one a life cut short, a family left to grieve, all because someone thought it was a good idea to give a career criminal a break. The story reaches its dramatic conclusion with Brown leading authorities on a high-stakes chase before ultimately taking his own life in the backyard of a suburban Detroit home.
And we have two big breaking stories. First at 4, an intense manhunt for a serial killer suspect in Detroit ends in gunfire, leaving that suspect dead. Also, a student drowns in the pool at Mumford High School. We have crews working both stories right now. Let's start with the search for that armed and dangerous man. It has all come down to a deadly ending in Oak Park. Let's go over to Local 4's Victor Williams. He joins us live from the scene. He was the first crew on the scene. Victor, what can you tell us?
Well, first off, this was a very intense situation. Me and my cameraman, Zach, we were the only ones here when we saw everything going down. We saw officers rushing to that backyard that you're looking at right over there on Ridgedale and Oak Park. We heard one single gunshot, and we believe that that was Mr. Kenyell Brown shooting himself. We saw him then being taken away on the stretcher. Right now, the chief is doing a press conference right over there. We pulled ourselves away so we could do this live shot really quickly, but once again, it looks like Kenyell Brown is in custody. Of course, he did shoot himself. Reporting live, Victor Williams, Local 4, but we are going to go ahead quickly right now to something that the chief said earlier.
I was seen by a clerk at the bookstore. He'd been there in the past. He would ingest what he described as smoking rock cocaine. On today's date, no evidence that he was doing that. However, he was in there, and they wanted him to leave. But they recognized him from news reports. So at that point, 12th Precinct responded in very quickly. A couple of our neighborhood police officers were first on the scene. He had already left the location, so they began to check the area. At some point, they became aware that he may have crossed 8 Mile into the city of Oak Park. He did do that. We then, as we continued our search, certainly with the assistance from Oak Park, we then began to search the area. And at some point, Oak Park and our officers, after there was a canine search, saw him. He began to evade the officers' attempt to detain him. At some point, as he jumped a fence and went into a rear yard of a residence, he fired a single shot into his head.
Now, the homeowner, they understood all this was going on. They noticed the man in the backyard, and from there, they called police. And of course, they all ended up here to take this man into custody. We'll have more of that at 5 p.m. For now, we are reporting live in Oak Park. Victor Williams, Local 4.
All right, we'll let you get back to the Chiefs press conference and gather more information. We'll see you at 5. Thank you, Victor.
A fitting end to a man who left a trail of destruction and heartbreak in his wake. So there you have it, folks. The mind-boggling tale of Kenyal Brown, the world's most incompetent informant. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of cutting deals with criminals and the importance of thorough background checks, because sometimes the monsters we create come back to haunt us in the most horrific ways imaginable. But hey, at least we can all sleep soundly knowing that the authorities have learned their lesson, right? Only time will tell. This has been Eagle, your host on True Crime Legacy, reminding you to stay vigilant, stay safe, and always question the decisions of those in power. Until next time, keep your wits about you, and remember, trust is earned, not given.
I'm going to Kurt Brown. Lives across the street from murder suspect Adam Mays, we believe on the run with 2 little girls tonight. Kurt Brown, I want to hear about...
There was a massive manhunt this morning underway for a Mississippi man suspected in the disappearance of a Tennessee mother and her 3 daughters. The suspect had been friends with them for years. Now, as Jim Axelrod reports, he has been linked to at least 2 suspicious deaths.
This week, we're covering a truly disturbing case out of Tennessee and Mississippi from 2012 involving murder, kidnapping, and a multi-state manhunt. And as always, there's more to it than that. Our story begins on April 27th, 2012, in the small town of Whiteville, Tennessee, population 4,638. 31-year-old Joanne Bain was in the process of packing up her home to move her family, including daughters 14-year-old Adrienne, 12-year-old Alexandria, and 8-year-old Kylia, to make a fresh start in Arizona. Helping her was 35-year-old Adam Mays, a close family friend who had known the Bains for years. Joanne's husband Gary woke up the next morning to find his wife and daughters gone, along with Adam. He tried calling Joanne's cell phone but got no response. When the girls didn't return home from school that day, Gary reported them missing, kicking off what would become a frantic search spanning multiple states. At first, investigators had no reason to suspect foul play. They interviewed Adam Mays, who claimed to be the last person to see Joanne and the girls, but police found no evidence a crime had occurred. That changed on April 30th when Joanne's abandoned SUV was found on a rural Tennessee road. Suspicions grew as Mays suddenly disappeared. On May 2nd, he was officially named a person of interest in the Bain family's disappearance. 2 days later, a gruesome discovery would confirm investigators' worst fears. Acting on information from Adam's wife Teresa, police uncovered the badly decomposed bodies of Joanne Bain and oldest daughter Adrienne, buried in a shallow grave behind the Mays family home in Alpine, Mississippi. Teresa told police she witnessed Adam commit the murders in the Bains' garage before forcing her to help transport the bodies and the 2 surviving girls, Alexandria and Kylia, to Mississippi. An all-out multi-state manhunt was launched for Mays and the kidnapped girls.
A Mississippi man suspected in the disappearance of a Tennessee mother and her 3 daughters. The suspect had been friends with them for years. Now, as Jim Axelrod reports, he has been linked to at least 2 suspicious deaths.
Authorities won't say yet whether 2 bodies found over the weekend are those of Joanne Bain or any of her 3 daughters. Police made the grim discovery at a home near Guntown, Mississippi, where it's believed their main suspect, Adam Mays, had been staying. Described as a family friend, the FBI believes Mays kidnapped the mother, along with 8-year-old Kalia, 12-year-old Alexandria, and 14-year-old Adrienne. The family was last seen 10 days ago at their home in Tennessee, where investigators returned Sunday searching for any clues.
Let us know where the kids are. Let us know where that mom is. It's that important.
Authorities have issued an Amber Alert and are calling Mays armed and extremely dangerous. While he was last seen in Mississippi, authorities say Mays has ties to Arizona, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida. His neighbors say they hope officials will track him down soon.
I don't want him hurting any more kids or, hurting anybody.
This is a pretty quiet community. Nothing serious has ever happened around here, so it's a pretty rough situation.
Authorities believe Mays has altered his appearance and may have cut and dyed the girls' hair to help keep their identities hidden. Mays is charged in Tennessee with abducting all 4 of the Bains, but authorities are still trying to determine if Joanne Bain went with him willingly. There's a $50,000 reward for any information leading to the Bain family and the arrest of Adam Mays.
Jim Axelrod, thank you for joining us.
On May 9th, he was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, replacing notorious mobster Whitey Bulger. A $175,000 reward was offered for information leading to his capture.
FBI says 2 bodies found behind a rural Mississippi home are those of a mother and her oldest daughter who were in the process of moving back to southern Arizona. Agents also say 2 surviving girls are with the man who owns the property where those bodies were found and could be heading our way. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Jennifer Waddell.
And I'm Guy Atchley. As the FBI confirms this terrible news, 9 on Your Side has confirmed that the mother and her girls have stronger ties to Pima County than we once thought, and so does the man suspected of being behind this murder kidnapping.
The Bain family once called Tucson home, and they were in the process of moving back when the mother and 1 daughter were killed. 2 more daughters are missing. This evening, the FBI is confirming the bodies are those of mother Joanne Thompson Bain and her 14-year-old daughter Adrienne Bain. Still missing are 12-year-old Alexandria and 8-year-old Kalia Bain, who are believed to be with someone who is a close family friend. He is identified as Adam Mays, also known as Christopher Zachary Wild or Paco Rodriguez. He is considered to be extremely dangerous and he could be heading to Arizona. Craig Smith has more now in this 9 on Your Side Crime Watch.
Joanne Bain and her 3 daughters disappeared from her old hometown in Tennessee about 10 days ago. Police and the FBI believe 35-year-old Adam Mays, once described as a family friend, is responsible. The bodies of Joanne and her oldest daughter, Adrienne, were found on his property in Mississippi, 80 miles away. The FBI says the 2 youngest girls are still with him. Photos from the Facebook page of one of his aliases show him in friendly poses with the Bain family, especially the 2 youngest girls. As of late last month, Joanne Bain had updated her Facebook page to show Tucson as home. It would be a return to the area. Public records show the family lived in this home in Pima County. They paid property taxes on it through 2008 and 2009. Jeff McMurray was their neighbor. He remembers Joanne and her husband Gary, but not very well.
I remember when Lori and them moved out and these people moved in, and they did have 2 or 3 kids. And he was a big guy, she was a small woman. They kept to themselves a lot. Didn't talk to him much, so.
Jeff McMurray tells us his girlfriend remembers a bit more, especially the girls peeking over the fence into his yard. She also remembers the family mentioning a move to Marana. The girls list Marana schools on their Facebooks. Investigators say Mays was helping the family prepare for a move to Arizona and may have ties to Arizona himself. Some of his pictures show what looks like Arizona scenery in the background. Though investigators have pictures of Mays and the girls, he may have taken steps to make them harder to recognize.
If you have information that he has altered the appearances of everybody, including himself, primarily from cutting their hair, so the girls may have far shorter hair than the pictures that are out there.
Now again, to further disguise himself, Mays may be calling himself Christopher Zachary Wild or Paco Rodriguez.
Craig, any description at this point of a vehicle that he may be driving?
Well, they don't have a description. He apparently started out driving Joanne Bain's truck, but he abandoned that vehicle.
Well, if anybody
Investigators uncovered that this horrific crime was not an impulsive act, but rather the culmination of a year-long plot fueled by Mays' infatuation and obsession with 12-year-old Alexandria Bain. According to a statement given by Teresa Mays, Adam was in love with Alexandria and couldn't bear the thought of losing her when the family moved to Arizona. He was even under the delusional belief that he may have fathered the two youngest girls, although DNA tests would later prove this was not the case. The level of planning that went into this abduction and murder plot was chilling. Teresa told investigators how she and Adam made multiple attempts to kidnap Alexandria and Kylia in the days before the murders. On one occasion, Teresa hid under blankets in their vehicle for 2 days, subsisting only on pickles, while Adam stalked the family. She claimed he threatened to kill her if she didn't help him carry out his sick plan. On that fateful April 27th night, Adam made his move, letting himself into the Bain house with his own key. Court testimony alleged he attempted to drug Joanne's husband Gary by fixing him a cocktail spiked with Visine and prescription pills. Once Gary was unconscious, Mays awoke Joanne and lured her out to the garage under the pretense her youngest daughter was sleepwalking. There, he bludgeoned her with a wooden board and strangled her to death as she fought for her life, scratching at his neck. Afterwards, he entered the house and smothered 14-year-old Adrienne to death before absconding with Alexandria and Kylia in tow with his wife. The pain, terror, and confusion those poor girls must have experienced in those moments is unimaginable. According to Teresa's statement, as they drove away from the only home those children had ever known, a scene of unthinkable horror, Adam eerily boasted to the grief-stricken 8-year-old Kylia that he would now be her father and Alexandria her mother. Sickening stuff. Back in Alpine, Mississippi, Adam borrowed a shovel and unceremoniously buried Joanne and Adrienne in the dirt behind his parents' trailer with a demeanor Teresa described as proud, boasting about fulfilling his depraved fantasy. As pressure from the manhunt intensified, Mays fled with Alexandria and Kylia into the dense surrounding woods of northern Mississippi. For 2 weeks, the nation held its breath, hoping against diminishing odds the girls would be found alive. Then, on May 10th, a break in the case. A tip led officers to a heavily wooded area near a church just a few miles from Mays' home. As they approached, they spotted one of the girls peeking out from behind a ridge. Mays, seeing his perverted plot unraveling, pulled out a 9mm pistol. As officers yelled for him to drop the weapon, he instead turned the gun on himself, firing a single shot into his head. He was later pronounced dead at a nearby hospital.
Looking all around the Alpine community for Adam Mays, the search finally hit a bullseye at an area scoped all week near the Zion Hill Baptist Church.
The game wardens were in the woods and came upon him.
Suddenly, authorities say Mays, near Alexandria and Kylia Bain, the two girls he kidnapped, made a desperate measure.
That's when he took his life and the kids were rescued.
At approximately 8:17 p.m., the body of Adam Mays was pronounced dead there at the hospital. At this time, he is en route to Jackson for an autopsy to be performed.
Union County Sheriff Jimmy Edwards said it was promptness of all law enforcement that led to rescuing the young children.
We were hopeful that we had got on it quick enough and were able, with all the combined efforts of all these agencies, to try to shut down any of his resources, and evidently that's what happened.
Maybe the most relieving thing to people today isn't that a man on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list is no longer roaming the state, but that Alexandria and Kylia came away in good condition.
Seeing those two children, such young and tender age, and knowing that they're safe, and is all worth it.
Now, after days on days of tireless efforts by almost 20 agencies, that hard work has paid off.
Well, it's a very remote area in here, and a lot of dense cover, and, but we've been working around the clock and tirelessly and clearing cabins and clearing deer stands and things of that nature, and, it just finally worked.
Thursday night marked a time for Alpine community members to breathe a long sigh of relief. In Guntown, I'm Justin Lewis, WTVA News Today.
After 2 harrowing weeks in captivity, 12-year-old Alexandria and 8-year-old Kylia were finally free from the clutches of the madman who murdered their mother and sister. The girls were dehydrated, exhausted, bitten up, and traumatized, but thankfully alive. In the aftermath, Mays' wife Teresa and mother Mary were charged with murder and kidnapping for their roles in aiding his crimes.
Odd, a loner, lived with his mother for most of his life, and in a stunning turn, what we thought was his ex-wife, we now learn his wife and his mother behind bars. This as a murder charge goes down. Martin Savage, what can you tell me?
Well, the murder charge now has been made against Adam Mays. It's not a surprise given the fact that we know he was involved with the deaths of the mother and eldest daughter. And murder charges now additionally have been filed against his wife, but it's what's in those documents. And this is where we get some new insight. We find, according to Teresa Mays in her statement to authorities, she was there when Adam Mays killed Joanne Bain and her oldest daughter. It took place in the garage of the home where they lived at the very night they were being kidnapped.
So you've got Teresa and Mary, a.k.a. Mary Francis, the wife and the mother of Adam Mays. And we are learning now that the mother is killed right there in that home in the garage. And I guess these 2 women are standing by twiddling their thumbs while a mother is murdered in the garage. But what about the 14-year-old girl? Martin Savage, are you confident that she was dead or alive when she was taken out of the family home?
According, again, to the court documents that we have and the statement that is attributed to Teresa May, she says that she witnessed the killing of both Joanne and Adrian, that it took place in the garage of the home. She doesn't say how they died. And then the 2 bodies she transported in addition to the 2 living children. That's the 8-year-old and the 12-year-old, Alexandria and Kylia. All of them put into the vehicle and transported down the Mississippi. You could only wonder what those children were thinking riding next to the body of their mother and oldest sister.
Steve Moore, former Fed FBI, what's it going to take to crack this mom and this wife? As far as I'm concerned, they're she-devils that should go right back to hell.
Well, like I said, you got to lean on them a little bit and fully explain to them where they're headed with this, and talk to them about the fact that they have one shot to avoid the green room. And that would be something that I would be hitting right now. The other thing the caller asked, some of his friends, yes, they're going to be pulling in and leaning on him real hard, but some of his other friends, they're not going to be talking to at all. They're just going to be following him.
In 2013, both pleaded guilty and are serving 35 and 13.5-year sentences, respectively. It's impossible to make sense of an act as heinous as this, a year-long murder and kidnapping plot born out of a grown man's delusional infatuation with a child, leading to the slaughter of a mother and daughter and the abduction of 2 little girls. For Alexandria and Kylia, their trauma is something they will grapple with for the rest of their lives. Murdered at the ages of just 31 and 14, respectively, Joanne and Adrian Bain deserved so much more from this life than to have it stolen by a family friend turned cold-blooded killer. But despite her husband's best efforts to erase his crimes, Joanne's protective spirit as a mother lives on through Alexandria and Kylia. In the face of unspeakable horror, those little girls survived. And while their healing journey will be lifelong, one can only hope they will go on to lead full and happy lives, breaking the cycle of trauma visited upon them and honoring the legacy of the mother and sister taken from them far too soon. Only one question remains: what on earth was Adam Mays unidentified body doing being donated to the University of Tennessee's famed Body Farm after this case? I'll leave that one for you to chew on until next time.
Were found alive and appear to be unharmed.
I've called everybody I know and told them they're alive, they're alive, they're alive. It's like a miracle.
From Tennessee to Tucson, news that 2 young girls missing for almost 2 weeks have been rescued brings tears of joy and raises hopes that another missing girl will be rescued as well. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Jennifer Waddell.
And I'm Guy Atchley. A massive nationwide manhunt is over tonight. The man who triggered it is dead and 2 young girls are alive and safe.
Alexandra and Kylia Bain were rescued just hours ago by police in Guntown, Mississippi during a raid in which the man accused of killing their mother and older sister turned his gun on himself. Crews rushed Adam Mays to the hospital after he shot himself in the head. He was found in a wooded area behind a church. The 2 girls, ages 8 and 12, were also found and went to the hospital just to be checked out. This comes just a day after Mays was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted list, wanted in the murders of the girls' mother, Joanne Bain, and 14-year-old sister, Adrian. Tonight, Mays' sister-in-law is expressing a bit of relief.
All I'm worried about is the children are safe. The rest of it is not even a concern. Thank you, God, for letting those kids come home.
The Bains were in the process of moving back to the Tucson area late last month when the kidnappings and killings happened. They left here a few years ago after the girls made a close friend in their neighbor, a woman who was overjoyed to hear the 2 youngest are now safe. Not on Your Side's Kevin Keene delivered that news to her, and he joins us now with her reaction.
Jennifer, Robin Miles says she and the Bain sisters brought each other a lot of happiness just by peeking over the fence between them. Tonight, Robin is overjoyed 2 of the little girls, once next door, are now safe.
Robin Miles had a special connection with the Bain family when they lived in southern Arizona, especially with the 3 little girls.
They'd peek over the fence and they'd go, "Is Robin here? Is Robin here?" And they'd, and Jeff, my friend, would say, "No, she's not here right now." But they'd always, and then I'd come over the fence and I'd go, "Yeah, Robin's here." And we just had this interaction that was just fantastic.
Then one night, Robin says the neighbors suddenly moved away. That was a few years ago. For the past few days, this mother of 4 felt like her own children were taken.
If I could have gone out in the woods and found them, I don't know where they were found, but I would have done any possible thing I could have to protect those 2 little girls, because they were just so precious. They are precious. Thank God, thank God. Thank God. Oh, thank God. I'm not a real religious woman, but I'm telling you, I thank God.
And what does Robin think of Adam Mays, the man suspected of kidnapping the Bains, murdering the mother and 1 daughter, and who ultimately shot himself dead?
I don't know how he died, but thank God he left 2. I thank him for leaving those 2 little girls alive, honestly. You can say what you want to about him, being the perpetrator, being a sick man, a psycho, but thank God he didn't take everybody with him.
After nights of prayer and sleeplessness, a different one tonight for this Tucsonan.
But I hope I see him again, because they're 2 children that the world would have lost.
Robin is deeply saddened the Bain's mother, Joanne, and the eldest daughter, Adrian, are dead. She says she doesn't want to think about what may have happened to the 2 other sisters these past 2 weeks. Her sights are set on their survival and on their future.
It is obvious that Robin had a special bond with those girls.
She did. She had several things in connection. She is also from a family of 3 sisters. They also shared a turtle in common. Robin had a turtle, and she shared it with the little girls.
Dave Mack, syndicated talk show host. So she befriends the mommy, the pregnant mom. She's like 8 months pregnant. Then she brutally attacks the new mom, cuts her stomach open, and takes out the unborn baby. What?
Today, We've got a doozy of a case from Worcester, Massachusetts, and let me tell you, it's a wild ride from start to finish. So grab a cup of your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's dive into the twisted tale of Julie Corey and the murder of Darlene Haynes. Our story begins way back in 2008 at the Southgate apartment complex in Worcester. Julie Corey and her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Alex Dion, were shacking up together. Now their relationship was about as stable as a one-legged chair, with Julie constantly accusing Alex of cheating on her. To make matters worse, Julie suffered a miscarriage while they were living at Southgate, which only added to the drama. Eventually, the two called it quits and went their separate ways. Fast forward to February 2009, and guess what? Julie and Alex were back together. Julie dropped the bombshell that she was pregnant again with Alex's baby, a little girl, and she was due on June 20th. But here's the thing. Their relationship was still rockier than a mountain range. They fought constantly about whether Julie was really pregnant, and Alex was getting suspicious because Julie wouldn't let him tag along to any of her doctor's appointments. Months went by, and Julie's supposed due date came and went. She kept feeding Alex different dates like they were going out of style. First, it was July 2nd, then July 4th. She even claimed she was scheduled for a C-section but got bumped off the list. Finally, she landed on July 24th. Julie was giving her friends and family the same runaround, changing the due date more often than most people change their socks. Enter Darlene Haynes, our victim in this tragic tale. Darlene was also a resident of the Southgate apartment complex and had briefly been Julie's neighbor. On July 23, 2009, Darlene was 8 months pregnant and ready to pop at any moment. That same day, Julie and Alex were at Alex's uncle's place, getting ready for Julie's alleged C-section the next day. They even packed the car with an overnight bag because apparently that's what you do when you're expecting a baby that may or may not exist. Later that afternoon, Julie headed out, claiming she was going to a friend's house. But then she called Alex and casually mentioned she was planning to give Darlene a ride to the store. Alex thought this was fishy since he knew Julie and Darlene weren't exactly BFFs. Darlene's landlord spotted her getting into a car with Julie around 3:30 p.m. that day. Later that evening, Julie came home but then left again to visit some mystery friend. Around 8 p.m., Darlene was seen at a package store near Southgate. And guess whose car was in the parking lot? None other than Alex's. From 8:45 p.m. to 11:20 p.m., Darlene was texting with a friend, saying another pal was coming over for a sleepover and that she was going to indulge in a wine cooler. In her last message at 11:20 p.m., Darlene said, "Good night." Little did she know it would be her last good night ever. Meanwhile, around 10 p.m., Julie started blowing up Alex's phone, complaining about stomach pains. An hour and a half later, she called again, saying her water broke and a friend was rushing her to a hospital in Framingham. A couple of hours after that, Julie announced she had given birth to a baby girl. Throughout the night, Julie kept calling Alex, whining about the hospital staff and threatening to leave against medical advice. During all this, the folks at Southgate were hearing some weird noises coming from Darlene's apartment. Between 2 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. on July 24th, neighbors heard banging sounds like someone was rearranging furniture. Then, from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m., they heard water running on and off in Darlene's place. Despite being weirded out, the neighbors didn't investigate or call the cops. July 24th, between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., Julie showed up at Alex's uncle's house with a baby girl in tow. Alex noticed the baby had dried blood all over her, and the umbilical cord was tied off with a string instead of the usual plastic clip hospitals use. When Alex asked about it, Julie claimed she told the doctor to remove the plastic clip because it was too heavy. Right, because that's totally a thing. Julie started parading the baby around, calling her bestie to share the good news and inviting a neighbor over to see the kid. The neighbor also noticed the blood and the weird string situation. Julie and Alex were broke, so the neighbor took them to the store to buy formula. Others who saw Julie with the baby that day commented on how small and cold the poor thing was. 2 days later, on July 26th, Julie and Alex packed up and moved to New Hampshire to stay with Julie's dad, but when they got there, Daddy Dearest said, "No way, Jose," and sent them packing to a motel. The next day, the couple hit up a welfare office in New Hampshire because Julie had been getting benefits for her supposed pregnancy. When asked for the baby's birth certificate or crib card, Julie was like, "Oops, I don't have either." Eventually, they found a shelter to crash at. While they were in New Hampshire, Julie started acting all kinds of shady about the baby. At a doctor's visit, she freaked out when the doc wanted to snap a pic of the kid and bolted before the doctor could grab a camera. Later, at the shelter, Julie was overheard saying, "Nobody's taking this child away from me." Spoiler alert, somebody definitely took that child away from her. Now, brace yourselves, because this is where things get really dark. On July 27th, Darlene's landlord went into her apartment to check on her pets and was smacked in the face with a nasty smell. In the bedroom, he found a blanket in the closet, and when he pulled on it, a leg fell out. It was Darlene's body, and it was a grisly scene. The autopsy revealed the horrifying details of Darlene's murder. She had been bludgeoned on the head, strangled with an electrical cord, and her abdomen was sliced open. Her reproductive organs were missing, and it was clear that her baby had been cut out of her. As the investigation unfolded, it turned out the baby Julie was parading around wasn't even hers. It was Darlene's biological child with her boyfriend, Roberto Rodriguez. Cops found no record of Julie giving birth at any hospital in the Framingham area. In Alex's car, they discovered a phony birth certificate listing Julie and Alex as the parents, along with documents about Julie's benefits and an appointment requiring her to bring the baby's birth certificate. Inside Darlene's apartment, investigators found evidence of a brutal struggle. The mattress was soaked with blood on both sides, and there were bloodstains all over the bedroom and kitchen. A Smirnoff bottle in the living room had Julie's DNA on it, and another bottle in the bedroom had her fingerprint. The prosecution argued that by July 23rd, Julie had lost her own baby and was freaking out. They said she was afraid Alex would leave her if she didn't have a kid, and that she'd lose her benefits. According to them, Julie saw Darlene and her unborn baby as the answer to her problems and decided to commit the unthinkable. But Julie's defense team had a different story. They argued that even if Julie took the baby, there was no proof she killed Darlene. They said there was no way Julie could have committed the murder, cleaned up the crime scene, gotten rid of the evidence, and taken care of the baby, all while constantly calling Alex. The defense pointed the finger at Roberto Rodriguez, Darlene's boyfriend and baby daddy. They brought up his history of violence towards Darlene, including a time he allegedly kicked her in the stomach and shoved her into a glass coffee table. Darlene even got a restraining order against him. One of Rodriguez's ex-girlfriends also testified about a time he grabbed her by the neck, dragged her into another room, and threatened to hang her with a belt. Yikes! The defense also brought up some other shady circumstances, like a witness seeing Rodriguez on July 24th walking away from a cemetery looking all kinds of sketchy. They suggested he could have buried evidence, like Darlene's missing organs, in the cemetery. Oh, and get this, when the cops first interviewed Rodriguez, he didn't even ask about the baby. Father of the year right there? But wait, there's more. The defense argued that the cops botched the investigation by not following up on leads and evidence. They mentioned people were seen going in and out of Darlene's apartment between July 23rd and when her body was found, including a guy named William Davio, who a neighbor picked out of a photo lineup. Another neighbor reported seeing a dude named Tim acting super suspicious in Darlene's apartment on the night of July 24th. Turns out Tim was Timothy Tripp, a buddy of Rodriguez's. The defense also ripped into the cops for not searching the cemetery where Rodriguez was spotted, not looking into the transactions on a debit card belonging to him that was found in Darlene's apartment, and not tossing Rodriguez's place or car. They also pointed out that a bunch of stuff in Darlene's apartment wasn't even checked for fingerprints, like a lamp with a missing cord that could have been used to strangle her. But despite all that, the jury still found Julie guilty of first-degree murder on 3 counts: premeditation, extreme atrocity or cruelty, and felony murder with the underlying charge of aggravated kidnapping.
Susan, a very, very emotional morning here in court, and the victim's father had planned to address the court personally, but he just couldn't go through with it. He was so distraught, so overcome with emotion. Legally speaking, the family of Darlene Haynes now has justice, but they say what they have is just not enough.
Present what he wanted to say.
In front of a stunned Worcester courtroom, the ashes of murder victim Darlene Haynes were displayed during the sentencing of her killer, 39-year-old Julie Corey. Darlene's father, Frederick Haynes, explains why he brought his daughter's ashes to court.
See what she did to her, you know?
Julie Corey was convicted last week of the first-degree murder of Darlene Haynes back in 2009 in Worcester. Haynes was 23 years old, a mother of 3 girls, and 8 months pregnant at the time. After the murder, Corey cut out and kidnapped the fetus and claimed she'd given birth to the girl. All along, Julie Corey has insisted she is not the real killer. Darlene Haynes' oldest daughter, Jasmine, now 9 years old, wrote a powerful victim impact statement, which the judge read in court.
Julie, I think it was mean to kill my mom. I think it was very bad that you did that. Signed, Jasmine Haynes.
Throughout the victim impact statements and the formal sentencing,
orders that you be punished therefore by being confined for a term of your natural life.
Julie Corey showed little emotion.
To me, it's not enough. Even if they get in a bunch of jail or man.
That's Frederick Haynes there, Darlene Haynes' father. He told us this morning he has never met his now 4-year-old granddaughter. She is being raised by her father. By the way, she is named Darlene Justice in honor of her late mother. Live in Worcester, Todd Kiskiewicz, WCVB News Center 5.
After the conviction, Julie's lawyers filed a motion for a new trial, saying her original lawyer was incompetent for not calling a cell phone expert to testify about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. They also asked the judge to find her not guilty. The judge said no to a new trial, but tossed out the felony murder conviction, saying there wasn't enough evidence to prove Julie committed aggravated kidnapping. Both Julie and the prosecution appealed the judge's decisions. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court ended up siding with the judge on not giving Julie a new trial, saying the choice not to call a cell phone expert was a reasonable strategy and wouldn't have changed the jury's mind. But they reinstated the felony murder conviction, saying there was enough evidence to show Julie hurt the baby when she kidnapped her. Finally, the court decided not to reduce Julie's conviction to a lesser charge, even though she might have had postpartum depression and psychosis. They said there wasn't enough proof that her mental state stopped her from forming the intent to kill, or that she acted on impulse instead of being straight-up cruel. So, there you have it, folks. The tragic, twisted tale of Darlene Haynes' murder and the stolen baby. Julie Corey's actions ripped apart the lives of Darlene's loved ones and left an innocent child motherless. Even though the defense raised some questions about the investigation and pointed fingers at other suspects, the jury still thought the evidence against Julie was solid. It's hard to wrap your head around what could drive someone to do something so heinous. Was it a desperate attempt to keep a relationship afloat and fake a pregnancy, fear of losing benefits, or just a sign of a deeply disturbed mind? We may never know for sure. But one thing's certain, Darlene Haynes lost her life in a brutal, senseless way, and her baby will grow up never knowing her mom. This has been the story of Julie Corey and the murder of Darlene Haynes, a case that shook the community of Worcester and beyond. It's a chilling reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, and that one person's actions can destroy so many lives. And that's all for this episode of True Crime Legacy. I'm your host, Eagle, reminding you to stay safe, stay vigilant, and hug your loved ones a little tighter tonight. Until next time, keep seeking the truth and fighting for justice. Thanks for listening, and remember, you're all legends in my book. Today, we're diving into a chilling case that took place in the idyllic town of Mount Vernon, New Hampshire. It's a story of a family's peaceful life shattered by an act of senseless violence that will leave you questioning the depths of human depravity. So, let's get into it. Our story begins with Kimberly and David Cates, a loving couple who decided to move to Mount Vernon back in 2003 with their young daughter, Jamie. They were looking for a slice of that small-town life, you know, a place where they could raise their kid without worrying about the craziness of the big city. They even had an alarm system installed, just to be on the safe side. But as time went on and nothing bad happened, they started to let their guard down a bit, thinking maybe they'd found a little piece of heaven on earth. Oh, how wrong they were. On October 4th, 2009, while David was away on business, the unthinkable happened. Around 3 a.m., Kimberly woke up to a dim light shining in her face. At first, she thought it might be Jamie, so she sat up and called out her daughter's name, but instead of Jamie's voice, she was met with a barrage of mashed blows, 36 in total. Can you even imagine? And as if that wasn't enough, a second attacker joined in, stabbing her over and over in the neck and torso. 11-year-old Jamie, woken up by her mother's screams, tried to make a run for it, but she didn't get far. One of the intruders, armed with a knife, stopped her in her tracks and proceeded to stab her 18 times. 18 times! In the chest, arms, legs, and back. At one point, he even threw her across the room into a glass door like she was nothing. The attackers, thinking they'd finished the job, took a few minutes to ransack the house for valuables before making their escape. But here's the thing. Jamie, this brave little girl, she played dead. She laid there perfectly still as these monsters stepped over her body, and when she was sure they were gone, she dragged herself to the kitchen, called 911, and whispered that someone had killed her mother before collapsing. When first responders arrived at the scene, they found Jamie in a pool of her own blood. Part of her left foot was missing, her jaw was fractured, and she had a deep cut across her throat. But somehow, miraculously, she was still alive. Kimberly, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. The attack had been so brutal, so vicious, that her skull was nearly split in half. The official cause of death was blood loss, and the coroner determined that she'd likely been conscious through most of it. Now, you might be wondering who could do something like this. Well, let me introduce you to 17-year-old Stephen Spader and his 19-year-old accomplice, Christopher Gribble. These two charmers showed up at their friend Autumn Savoy's house just before sunrise, bragging about how they'd just killed 2 people and asking for help, getting rid of the evidence. And get this, Savoy wasn't even surprised. Apparently, they'd asked him to join in beforehand, but he'd passed on the invite. Nice move, buddy. Anyway, they gathered up the bloody clothes and the stolen goods they didn't think were worth selling and tossed them into the Nashua River. Then, thinking they'd gotten away with murder, Spader and Gribble went home to catch some Z's. Later that day, Gribble hit up a pawn shop to unload Kimberly's jewelry, which, by the way, only got him a measly $130. Guess that goes to show their motive wasn't really about the money, huh? But here's where these criminal masterminds slipped up. They just couldn't keep their mouths shut. They started making the rounds, boasting to anyone who would listen about what they'd done. Lucky for us, some of their pals had the good sense to report these confessions to the cops. And just like that, before the day was over, Spader and Gribble were in cuffs, along with their two accomplices, William Marks and Quinn Glover. During questioning, Gribble tried to play it cool at first, claiming he was a gentleman who'd never lay a hand on a woman or child. But when he found out Jamie was still alive and could ID him, his tune changed real quick. He started asking about the death penalty and possible prison sentences before finally deciding to come clean.
Next, he said something to the effect of, now we write up a warrant for your arrest. And I asked him on what charge. Somehow in there, he brought up the idea that I was going to get charged with murder and probably capital murder. I didn't understand what capital murder was. They had referred to the death penalty before, but I didn't make the connection at that point. So I asked him what capital murder was.
Now, you said was that in the part of the interview we were
Yes,
talking about earlier?
Yes, that was in a part of the interview earlier. They had mentioned something about the death penalty. I don't remember the exact reference.
Okay. So
during this conversation with John, he explained to me that capital murder carried a death penalty. And at that point I was like, death penalty? And I sort of sat thinking about that for a little while. They'd mentioned things that set me off. There's some things you can infer from a crime scene that I could tell they could infer from it. And there are some things that I knew were lies that I'd heard them say. And there were other things that hit way too close to the mark that they couldn't know without somebody saying something. Like how Billy had not been able to get out of the basement. That's something that you can't infer from the crime scene, to my mind. And there were other things. They mentioned something about, did we go out and bury something? That specifically hit me, and I was thinking about that while John was walking around the room during that break, because as I remembered, only me and Steve knew that we'd buried the weapons, and if he was saying things, then they could have everything. So it didn't really matter at that point. I was like, well, if they give me the death penalty, then I'll just be dead and this all will be over with anyway. So, be like killing myself. So, at that point I was kind of like, you know what, John, why don't you get your tape recorder? And he came back in. He was all excited.
Gribble spilled the beans, saying Spader was the mastermind behind the whole thing. They'd scoped out the Cates' secluded home in advance, planning to kill everyone inside and take whatever they wanted. They cut the power, snuck in through a window, and launched a frenzied attack on the sleeping mother and daughter. And while Spader and Gribble were busy playing Dexter, their buddy Marks watched from the doorway, and Glover, who apparently didn't have the stomach for it, hid out in the living room. Now Spader, on the other hand, he confessed right off the bat, no hesitation, and the way he told the story, you'd think he was proud of what he'd done. Turns out this kid had been a ticking time bomb from day one. He was adopted by a loving family as a baby, but by the time he hit his teens, he'd turned into a real piece of work. Defiant, violent, the whole 9 yards. Get this. He even started his own little gang called the Disciples of Destruction. Original, right? To join, his buddies Gribble, Marks, and Glover had to agree to take part in a home invasion and murder. And apparently, none of them had a problem with that. They were all about that serial killer life, looking up to those sickos like they were some kind of rock stars. Fast forward to the trial, and everyone's turning on Spader, trying to save their own skin. Marks, Glover, and Savoy all took the stand against him, hoping for lighter sentences. Glover even told the jury about Spader's twisted fantasies of slaughtering people and, get this, eating them. The prosecutor called him a straight-up psychopath, and the judge didn't mince words either, telling him he belonged in a cage.
Well, Tom and Tiffany, 9 days of graphic and gut-wrenching testimony, and the jury reached its verdict with what analysts describe as lightning speed. Afterward, the court heard directly from the husband and father who lost so much in this senseless crime.
David Cates gave the court a glimpse of the woman so brutally taken away from him and his daughter last October.
It makes me sad. This trial is how we will know and remember Kim Cates. For she was so much more than this tragic ending. If you had met Kim, you would want her to be your fellow worker, your PTA member, your neighbor, your workout buddy, or just your best friend. Certain that the physicians will be able to diminish the many physical scars she will carry with her forever. However, the emotional scarring Jamie has endured is immeasurable and unknown at this point.
After the verdict, defense attorneys said they were, quote, disappointed.
We're defense attorneys for a reason. We believe everyone deserves a defense, and we certainly tried to zealously advocate for our client as best as we could.
This was a case that was definitely hard on everyone involved, not just the people in our office, but the state police who worked on it, the other investigators who worked on it. For everyone, it was an extremely difficult case for a lot of reasons. Again, we do this stuff for a living, but it doesn't mean that we get used to it.
But he pointed out the heaviest burden is on Jamie and David Cates. Mr. Cates did not address Stephen Spader by name in his statement, saying only that his life sentence was, quote, not justice.
My only hope is that very soon true justice finds you.
As you've heard, Spader faces a life sentence without the possibility of parole, but his convictions on other counts will be served consecutively, meaning beyond that life sentence, he has a minimum 76 years still to serve. Adam Sexton, WMUR News 9.
In the end, Spader got life without parole. As for the others, Glover got 20 to 40 years, Marks got 30 to 60, and Savoy, who helped with the cover-up, did 5 to 12 before getting paroled in 2012. But let's not forget about Christopher Gribble, the devout Mormon, who's even more terrifying than Spader. If you can believe it, this guy admitted he'd been fantasizing about murder since he was a kid, especially about killing his own mother. He told a shrink he had the potential to become a serial rapist and that he wanted to see his folks dead. But get this. The therapist brushed it off, said he was just blowing off steam. Gribble ended up getting cozy with Spader in 2009, and together they were like a match made in hell. At his trial, Gribble actually smirked when they brought up the possibility of life in prison, saying the other inmates had no idea who they were messing with. Well, guess what, pal? Turns out, when you're not stabbing helpless women and children, you're not so tough after all. Gribble ended up being a target behind bars and had to be put in protective custody. In the end, Jamie and her dad stayed in the house where it all went down. They got a guard dog, kept the alarm system, and tried to move forward. They even started a charity golf tournament in Kimberly's name to help local kids go to college. As for Jamie, she's in her 20s now, a college grad with a job in healthcare. And while she'll always carry the scars of that horrible night, she refuses to let it define her. She's a survivor through and through. Kimberly, on the other hand, she was the kind of person who lit up a room, you know? A caregiver, loved by everyone, taken way too soon by a bunch of thugs who didn't give a damn about anyone but themselves. And let's not forget what Gribble said in court, that if he ever got out, he couldn't promise he wouldn't kill again. If that doesn't give you chills, I don't know what will. Well, that's all for this episode of True Crime Legacy. It's a hard one to shake off, I know, but if there's one thing we can take away from this, it's that even in the darkest of times, there's still hope, still strength, still survivors like Jamie who refuse to let the bad guys win. I'm your host, Eagle, and I'll be back with another case that'll keep you up at night. Until then, take care of yourselves and remember, you never know what evil might be lurking just around the corner. So, stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time. Today, we're diving into the tragic case of Brianna Dennison, a young woman whose life was cut short by a depraved individual. It's a story that shook the city of Reno, Nevada, and left a lasting impact on the community. So, let's get into it, shall we? Our story begins with Brianna Dennison, a 19-year-old college student from Santa Barbara, California. Brianna, or Bri as her friends called her, was a bright, bubbly psychology major at Santa Barbara City College. In January 2008, she decided to take a break from the sunny beaches of California and head to Reno, Nevada for a little winter fun. Brianna had big plans for her trip. She was going to attend the SWAT 72 snowboarding festival, catch up with some old friends, and just have a grand old time. On the night of January 19th, Brianna and her bestie, KT Hunter, hit up some festival events and ended the night with a late breakfast at the Sands Regency Casino Hotel. I mean, who doesn't love a good 4 a.m. casino breakfast, right? After their late-night feast, Brianna and KT headed back to KT's place on McKay Court, just a stone's throw from the University of Nevada, Reno campus. Brianna, being the trusting soul she was, decided to crash on the couch. KT gave her a pillow, a teddy bear, and a couple of blankets, and off to dreamland they went. Little did they know, a real-life boogeyman was about to make an appearance. The next morning, KT woke up and noticed something was off. Brianna was nowhere to be found, and there was a small blood stain on her pillow. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe she just had a really intense nosebleed. But no, this was something much more sinister. KT started to panic. She called Brianna's mom and then the police. The cops showed up and started poking around the house, trying to piece together what happened. They found a blood-stained blanket on the kitchen floor, and get this, the teddy bear was missing too. I guess the perp needed a cuddle buddy for later. As the investigation kicked into high gear, the cops discovered that the blood on the pillow belonged to Brianna. But here's the kicker, it also had traces of saliva and mucus mixed in. The detectives figured Brianna must have put up a fight, and the attacker probably tried to smother her with the pillow. Talk about a rude awakening. The police and a bunch of volunteers started combing the area, looking for any sign of Brianna. They had flyers, blue ribbons, the whole shebang.
She is one of the nicest girls, and if whoever did this is watching, just, she's so nice, just, please, bring her back.
Bree is 19-year-old Brianna Dennison, a college student who went to a concert and a party in downtown Reno Saturday. She spent the night on a couch at her friend's house, but by early Sunday morning, she had vanished.
She wasn't there, and I noticed blood on the pillow, so we called the cops, and from there it's just been the nightmare.
Dennison goes to college in Santa Barbara, California, but she was in Reno visiting friends and family for the weekend. Brianna's friend says the front door was not locked that night. Nevada police say they would like to talk to a man who dropped off a friend of Dennison's at the home. Her aunt says Brianna had also gotten a text message from her boyfriend that night.
Just awful. They were breaking up kind of stuff, you know, and he just was saying awful things to her, you know, calling her all kinds of names and stuff like that. He was just jealous and young.
Authorities say Brianna left behind her purse, cell phone, and some clothing. Dennison's family is not giving up hope, but said they are confused by the events of the night.
What scares me is like the dog not barking. Did he know that person that came in? Did they sleep through a dog barking? Why did Brianna not scream?
No suspects have been named in the case, but they are treating it as a kidnapping. Camille Bohannon, The Associated Press.
But as the days turned into weeks, there was still no trace of her. It was like she vanished into thin air. The detectives started digging into some other cases in the area, hoping to find a connection. Lo and behold, they stumbled upon 2 attacks on female UNR students that happened just a couple of months before Brianna went missing. And let me tell you, These attacks were straight out of a horror movie. In November 2007, a 21-year-old student was jumped in a campus parking lot. The creep put her in a chokehold and started groping her before he got spooked and ran off, leaving behind a lovely parting gift of unopened condoms. I mean, who says romance is dead? But wait, it gets worse. In December, another student was attacked. This time, the sicko choked her until she passed out, threw her in his truck, and sexually assaulted her before dropping her back off at home with a charming threat that he might come back for round 2. Yikes! The police realized they were dealing with a serial predator who had a type: young, petite, long-haired women. And guess what? The DNA from these attacks matched the DNA found at Brianna's abduction site. They had a serial rapist on their hands, and he was escalating. On February 15th, 2008, the search for Brianna came to a devastating end. A body was found in a field near a business park, partially hidden by the melting snow.
A body found in Reno, Nevada Friday is that of 19-year-old Brianna Dennison. Police confirmed the identity Saturday. Dennison was abducted from a friend's apartment nearly a month ago as she slept on a couch. Police say she was strangled by a serial rapist. Her body was found in a field about 8 miles from where she was last seen. Police say it had been there for more than a week. Heavy snowfall in recent weeks may have delayed the discovery. Police say they're looking for a serial rapist who has been tied by DNA evidence to at least 2 other crimes. In the days after Dennison's disappearance, friends and volunteers repeatedly searched for her, hoping she would be found alive. Matt Friedman, The Associated Press.
Dental records confirmed everyone's worst fear. It was Brianna. The poor girl had been raped and strangled, likely within days of her disappearance. But the sick twist in this story: the killer left 2 pairs of women's thong underwear under Brianna's body, and 1 pair had his DNA on it. It was like he was taunting the cops, leaving a twisted calling card. The community was shaken to its core. Over 3,000 people showed up to a Live, Love, and Unite ceremony in Brianna's memory, while the police worked around the clock to find her killer. They interviewed hundreds of sex offenders, chased down thousands of leads, and processed countless DNA samples. But the big break in the case came from an unexpected place. On November 1st, 2008, almost 10 months after Brianna's disappearance, the Reno Police Department got a tip from Secret Witness. Someone claimed that a guy named James Biela was acting suspiciously and matched the suspect's description. Detective Adam Wignansky brought Biela in for a little chat. Turns out, this 27-year-old pipefitter from Chicago had a rap sheet that included violent outbursts and run-ins with the law. During the interview, Biela was more fidgety than a kid who drank too much soda. But without hard evidence, Wignansky couldn't keep him. That's when Biela's girlfriend, the mother of his 4-year-old son, entered the picture. She spilled the beans about Biela's sketchy behavior, his mysterious disappearances, and get this, a pair of women's underwear she found in his car when she was helping him move back to Reno from Washington. Biela's excuse? He claimed he swiped them from a laundromat. Right, because that's totally normal behavior. Biela's girlfriend had a hunch that something wasn't right, so she gave the cops a DNA sample from their kid. And boy, was her instinct spot on. The results showed that the little boy's DNA was a close match to the suspect's profile. Talk about keeping it in the family. Armed with this new evidence, the police slapped a warrant on Biela and arrested him at his son's daycare center on November 25th, 2008. They charged him with Brianna's murder and the kidnapping and sexual assault of the 2 UNR students. And wouldn't you know it, his DNA was a perfect match to the suspect's profile. Bingo! Fast forward to May 2010, and James Biela is standing trial for his heinous crimes.
Testimony in the James Bila trial moved on to how investigators piece things together in this case and what happened after the arrest. We want to warn you, what came out today in court may not be suitable for children. Brandon.
Okay, well, the video shows the inside of an interrogation room at the Reno Police headquarters. Now, once his girlfriend walks in, the camera was pointed at James Bila in the courtroom because we're not supposed to show the face of his girlfriend on television. We will show you some video of Bila in that room before she walks in, but either way, once she walks in, you can hear the exchange between the two. Carleen Harmon asked her boyfriend James Bila whether he did the things he was accused of more times than we could count. He never answered yes. He never answered no. What he did say is, "I can't tell you." He refuses to answer her question every time she asks it. Bila seemed emotional in the courtroom watching the video. He kept his head down while it played. In the video, at one point, he asked her why she lied to him about providing a DNA sample from their 4-year-old son. That sample is how police say they identified Bila as the attacker in the rapes and murder. As the video went on, Bila apologized to Harmon for ruining her Thanksgiving and her birthday. By being arrested, we presume. This all happened. Detective David Jenkins said after that meeting, Bila told police, quote, he was evil and hoped his son didn't grow up to be effed up like him. At one point in the video, Bila tried to reason why he couldn't tell his girlfriend if he did commit the rapes and murder he was accused of. She asked him, "Why can't you tell me?"
Well, a whole lot of detail about the murder of Breonna Dennison and her accused killer surfaced today in court. And we want to warn parents, you might not want your kids to hear some of it.
Yes, we did, and they described James Bila as, first of all, an excellent worker, and second of all, a rather friendly guy. But they say his general mood sort of changed around the late part of 2007, the same time Bila is accused of committing the 2 rapes in this case. Prosecutors called Bila's former supervisor, John Latham. Latham said on February 15, 2008, after Breonna Dennison's body was found that same morning, Bila quit his job, took his last paycheck, and moved to Washington State. Also that same day, Latham talked with Bila about the discovery of the body.
I asked him how he felt about her being found, and his comment is that she...
And I know there was some colorful language. Say exactly what he said.
The bitch probably had it coming.
Defense asked Latham whether he reported it to police.
No, I did not. He always had that sense of humor, and a lot of guys have that kind of humor.
Then we heard from Reno Police Detective Adam Wignansky. He made contact with Bila after the secret witness tip came in. The detective left a business card on the front door of Bila's home in Sparks. When Bila called him back, he never asked Wignansky why he wanted to talk with him. They met the next day at a Wendy's. Wignansky says Bila's story started to fall apart. First, Bila gave a false description of the Toyota truck he used to own, and then this.
I asked him if he ever left the Reno area, and he said he did not. And just moments ago, he just told me he traded a truck in at Kellogg, Idaho.
That was Kellogg, Idaho, less than an hour from the Washington state border.
After 3.5 weeks of damning testimony from 60 witnesses, the jury found him guilty on all counts. The Dennison family finally got the justice they so desperately sought. On June 2nd, 2010, James Bila was sentenced to death for Breonna's murder, and he got 4 extra life sentences for the rapes and kidnappings of his other victims.
Deliberating for almost 9 hours, the jury brought back its decision about 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Yeah, and that decision was greeted with joy and relief, as you can imagine, by Breonna Dennison's family, and tears by the relatives of convicted killer James Bila. Bill Brown joins us.
And that any mitigating circumstance or circumstances are not sufficient to outweigh the aggravating circumstances found. Therefore, by reason thereof, set the penalty of sentence to be imposed at death.
And counsel will have access to it.
And shortly thereafter, James Bila was led from the courtroom. Now, you're not going to be able to quite hear this as he goes by, but right here, he tells his mother not to cry, and he loves the family. I was standing right next to him as he went by. Now, in Nevada, the appeal of a death sentence is automatic. The defense team told me immediately afterward they're already in the process of readying that case. The Dennison family, on the other hand, had shed plenty of tears, and they were tears of joy. Immediately they began passing out the familiar blue ribbons we so often saw when the search was on for Bree. This was time to proclaim that Bree, in fact, finally did have justice. And with more on how the Dennison family and, of course, the prosecutors reacted after this, I'm joined by Jen Jackson. That was a separate press conference. Jen, what was the mood in there?
Bill, let me tell you, there were plenty of times when there were tears in view and voices were choked with emotion as, so many people addressed the courtroom. Now, District Attorney Dick Gamick says they may not have been able to bring Bree back, but they did bring Bree justice. And it's the community that so many people decided to stop and thank, including Dick Gamick.
Even though it took a monumental set of tragedies, remembering that we had 3 victims in this community, it brought all of us together and there were positive results. The community came together to help in every way possible.
Together we have lost a beautiful, vibrant, and promising life. And a family and friends have suffered unimaginable tragedy. But we can and will turn this loss into something positive and good. When James Michael Bila messed with my little girl, he messed with the wrong families, the wrong group of women, and the wrong city and state.
And Bridget and the Dennison family told me that they're relieved this is over so that they can move on and do some other things. And by the way, the rape victim from October of 2007, Amanda's mom was in that press conference today. She read a statement on behalf of Amanda, who thanked so many people, and Amanda says she's now going to become a victim's advocate because of everything that happened with her case and everything that's come out of this with Bila's conviction and sentencing. Bill.
Yeah, it was quite a day down there.
Definitely.
As a matter of fact, there is one more family that we're going to have to hear from. That will come up for you at 5:30, and that is the family of James Bila. By the way, there is still formal sentencing to be done in this case, and that will be on July 30th, not only for the murder, but for the other 3 charges against him. We'll be back with more on this at 5:30, of course, reporting live on the James Bila trial. For Jen Jackson, this is Bill Brown, Channel 2 News.
The Dennison family, in their grief and strength, vowed to fight for tougher laws and better support for victims of violent crime. Breonna Dennison's legacy lives on through the Bring Bree Justice Foundation, which works to create positive change in the face of tragedy. Her story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of a community coming together to confront evil. Breonna may be gone, but she'll never be forgotten. She was a shining light, a devoted friend, and a cherished daughter and sister. Her story reminds us to always fight for justice, to lift each other up, and to never underestimate the impact one life can have on the world. Well, there you have it, folks. The tragic case of Breonna Dennison. It's a heavy one, I know, but it's important that we talk about these things. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other. I'll see you next time on True Crime Legacy.
Now, and police in southeastern Indiana say he killed his brother because of an obsession with a television show. Both sides.
The facts are these. On November 29, 2009, Andrew Conley walked into the Rising Sun Police Department and told them that he had killed his little brother, Connor Conley.
Today, we're covering a disturbing case out of Rising Sun, Indiana, involving the murder of 10-year-old Connor Conley at the hands of his older brother, Andrew Conley, who was 17 at the time. Let's get into the background. Andrew and Connor lived with their parents, Sean and Bridget Conley, in the small town of Rising Sun, population around 2,500. By all accounts, Connor was a good kid, a 5th grader, honor roll student, lots of friends. Andrew was a high school student, but the family had recently withdrawn him because he had been cutting his arms. A red flag in hindsight. Now onto the fateful night of November 28th, 2009. The boys' parents were both at work, so 17-year-old Andrew was left to watch 10-year-old Connor. What should have been an ordinary evening turned into an unspeakable tragedy. Andrew would later tell police that he and Connor were wrestling when suddenly Andrew put Connor in a chokehold from behind until the boy lost consciousness. Connor's heartbreaking last words, "Andrew, stop." But Andrew didn't stop. Instead, he dragged Connor's barely breathing body into the kitchen, put on some gloves, and continued strangling his little brother for a full 20 minutes until blood came out of Connor's mouth and nose. Andrew then retrieved a plastic bag, put it over Connor's head, and secured it with black electrical tape. But the horror wasn't over. Andrew dragged Connor's body down to the basement, then outside to the car. Before putting Connor in the trunk, Andrew slammed the poor boy's head on the ground multiple times. I know it's hard to even comprehend someone inflicting this level of violence on anyone, let alone their own little brother. Shockingly, Andrew didn't go straight to dumping the body. Still with Connor in the trunk, Andrew first went over to his girlfriend's house for a few hours, even giving her a sweetheart ring. The girlfriend would later tell police Andrew seemed happier than usual. How twisted is that? Finally, around 11 p.m., Andrew drove to a wooded area by the Rising Sun City Park, near Connor's elementary school, and left his brother's body there, partially concealed with some vegetation. He then went home and, when his parents asked about Connor's whereabouts, claimed the boy was at their grandmother's house at. The next day, November 29th, is when things really started to unravel for Andrew. He confessed to 2 friends that he had killed Connor. Let's pause to appreciate that his first confessions were to teenage buddies, not the police. Real smart move there, Andrew. Later that day, Andrew walked into the Rising Sun police station and confessed. He told detectives he had fantasized about killing someone since 8th grade and compared his urge to kill to a craving for a hamburger. "I'm not loving it, Andrew." He also referenced relating to the titular character from the TV show Dexter, but I think we can all agree that Andrew is no Michael C. Hall. Police would find Connor's body that night around 8:15 p.m., and Andrew was taken into custody. The town of Rising Sun was rocked by the news. With a population that small, a crime this brutal really hits hard.
Documents with the confession police say Andrew Connolly made. It details how they say he murdered his little brother and why. Now, here are just a few of the details. Police say Andrew admitted to them when they questioned him. They say that Andrew placed his hands on Connor's throat and choked him. Andrew carried Connor's body to a wooded area and laid the body on the ground and covered it with vegetation. Police also say Andrew thought about doing different things to people, quote, taking a knife and cutting someone's throat or beating them to death with my hands. You know, this murder has rocked this small community of Rising Sun. This is a town where everyone knows everyone, a town that hasn't seen a murder in more than 15 years. Laura Borchers has reaction to our #1 story.
Officers say he told them killing was a hunger. Now, 17-year-old Andrew Conley is being held here at the Switzerland County Jail in a single cell.
I just live around the corner from where they found him.
Feet from where 10-year-old Connor Conley's body was discarded. Now walking through the small town streets of Rising Sun, Nancy Cohn, like many, is stunned.
Very shocked, very shocked. I mean, it's heartbreaking, you know. I mean, you can't believe it because this is such a beautiful town.
Prosecutors describe what happened last Saturday.
Andrew Conley choked his little brother until he became unconscious.
Then dragged Connor into the kitchen to strangle his little brother for 20 minutes.
He then placed a plastic bag over his head and secured it with electrical tape.
Prosecutors add Andrew stuffed his little brother in the trunk of his car and visited his girlfriend before dumping Connor's body yards from his elementary school.
We felt that this was a cold-blooded murder.
It's shocking. Like, I don't really know what to say. Like, it's just crazy.
Kyle Munchin is just a year younger than Andrew Conley. He says he hadn't seen Andrew in school recently, and tonight he can't help but feel for the boy's parents.
my heart goes out to his family big time.
Bridget and Sean Conley had been at work and believed their youngest son was staying at his grandma's. But the next morning, detectives say Sean had awakened to Andrew standing over him with a knife.
I just hope they can get through it because it's just sad that their little boy is, there's no explanation why his brother did this.
Investigators say in Andrew's confession, he told them thoughts about killing someone began in the 8th grade. Officials today called Andrew Conley evil and are haunted by what they say were Connor's last words.
Andrew, stop.
Conley is not eligible for the death penalty because he is 17 years old. Prosecutors say they may consider asking for life without parole. In VV, Laura Borchers, News 5.
Andrew Conley also told police that he watches a show called Dexter and that he identifies with its serial killer. Dexter, as you may know, is a Showtime cable series about a covert killer who works for Miami, Florida's police department as a blood spatter analyst. But secretly, Dexter takes the lives of people who have escaped punishment for their crimes.
Okay, so here is what happens next. Andrew Conley is now at an adult jail in Switzerland County, and he will appear in adult court.
Connor's school brought in counselors and ministers to help the students and staff try to process this devastating loss. So, what was the fallout for Andrew? Well, due to his age, he wasn't eligible for the death penalty, but was charged as an adult with murder. In police interviews, he expressed no remorse, even coldly stating he felt he had to kill Connor. Prosecutor Aaron Negengard didn't mince words, calling Andrew a cold-blooded murderer. In a disturbing twist, it came out that Andrew had twice entered his father's bedroom that morning after the murder, standing over him with a knife. Luckily, Andrew ultimately didn't go through with harming his dad too. Small mercies, I guess. Fast forward to September 2010, and Andrew pleaded guilty to Connor's murder.
Plea today in the case of an Indiana boy accused of strangling his little brother.
Andrew Conley of Rising Sun changed his plea to guilty, and now he could face life in prison without the possibility of parole. Shannon Kettler explains how attorneys for both sides plan to argue sentencing.
Well, prosecutors say they, too, were surprised by the change in plea by 18-year-old Andrew Conley. Conley arrived in dress clothes for his trial this morning, but instead of jury selection, he told the judge he wanted to change his plea to guilty. Prosecutors say Conley strangled his younger brother, 10-year-old Connor, at the Rising Sun home back in November 2009. Andrew allegedly told police he watched a series called Dexter on Showtime about a serial killer and felt, quote, just like him. On Wednesday, prosecutors plan to ask a judge for Conley to serve life in prison without parole. The teen faces a minimum of 45 years in prison, but he wouldn't necessarily have to serve all of it.
One of the problems with the law in Indiana is good time credit starts at half. And then on top of that, they can get educational credits, which has been why one of the problems in this case is he's so young that almost any sentence he got, he would be out at a relatively young age.
Andrew's attorney tells us his client is remorseful and wanted to make this guilty plea from the very beginning. The judge will decide on sentencing this Wednesday. In Rising Sun, Shannon Kettler, 9 News.
At the sentencing hearing, prosecutors pushed for life in prison without parole, painting Andrew as a remorseless killer who would strike again. The defense argued for a lighter sentence of 65 years, citing mitigating factors like Andrew's age, lack of criminal history, and cooperation with police. After an emotional 5-day hearing, the judge ultimately sided with the prosecution. Citing the heinous nature of the crime and Andrew's lack of remorse, he sentenced Andrew to life without parole. A small measure of justice for Connor.
Andrew Conley is going to spend life behind bars. News 5's Brian Hamrick is live outside the courthouse with details on the sentencing. Brian?
Yeah, Jack, well, the judge here says that even though Andrew Conley is 18 years old, he should die of old age in prison before he is ever set free. And today, Conley was sentenced to the maximum. Andrew Conley is led from the courtroom after learning the length of his sentence is also the length of his life. He said nothing as he was taken back to prison, but did interact with his attorney.
He was basically just very subdued, tearful.
Cameras were not allowed in court, and only a handful of people attended the hearing. Andrew's step-grandfather was the only family member to speak.
I'm just glad everything's done and over with us, you know. That's all. It sucks, man.
I mean, it's not what you hoped for.
No, I gotta go.
The judge considered statements from Andrew's parents.
I never would have thought this.
And even his fascination with TV serial killer Dexter, heard in jailhouse conversations.
So Dexter got arrested? Dang.
The fact that the victim, Connor Connolly, was under 12 years old was the aggravating factor that allowed the life sentence. Judge James Humphrey saying aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt.
I believe if he ever got out of jail that he would kill someone else. The judge in his decision today is assured that that will not happen.
Now, defense attorneys say they do plan to appeal this, but new attorneys will be appointed for that process. Reporting live, Brian Hamrick, News 5.
As for Connor's parents, I can't even imagine the depths of their grief, losing not one but both sons in this tragedy. They've since divorced, and sadly but unsurprising outcome, my heart goes out to them. Looking back, it's hard not to wonder if there were signs, red flags, that Andrew was going down a dark path. The self-harm, the violent fantasies. In hindsight, it feels like this kid was crying out for help that never came. Not that anything excuses the choice he made to brutally murder his brother. What I struggle with is Andrew's motive or lack thereof. He never gave a real reason for killing Connor. The best he could come up with was saying he felt he had to, like a hamburger craving. I don't know about you, but I've never had a Big Mac attack so bad I wanted to strangle someone. And his efforts to emulate the Dexter character, a vigilante serial killer, make zero sense, as Connor was an innocent child, not some criminal who escaped justice. It's like Andrew latched onto this edgy anti-hero to justify his own dark urges. But Dexter is a fictional character, and Andrew's actions have real-world consequences he'll be facing for the rest of his life behind bars. Personally, I think Andrew is a deeply disturbed individual. I don't believe he killed Connor because of a TV show. I think he likely would have acted on his homicidal fantasies with or without Dexter. The show was just a convenient scapegoat. But the reality is, we may never truly understand what drove Andrew to commit such an unthinkable act of violence against his own flesh and blood. What we do know is that a young boy's life was cut short in a brutal way, and the ripple effects of Andrew's actions have devastated a family and a community. So I think the takeaway here isn't to point fingers at TV shows or any other boogeymen. It's to remember Connor, an innocent 10-year-old with his whole life ahead of him. It's to have compassion for his parents, who are living every parent's worst nightmare. And it's to be aware of the warning signs in the Andrews of the world, the kids who are crying out for help, and do our best to get them that help before they make choices they can't take back. This has been a tough one to talk about, but I appreciate you taking the time to hear this story with me. Give your loved ones an extra hug today, and take care of yourselves. I'll be back next week with another case. Until then, stay safe out there.
The Chief's last act of service. I'm Paul Folger.
I'm Jessica Shambach. Investigators say someone shot and killed Nichols Hills Fire Chief Keith Bryan inside his home. We have team coverage tonight. Carla Wade has more on the Chief's organ donation, but first tonight.
I don't know, this man, this 26-year-old man with a hoodie cap on walked into our house, through our garage, and he walked into the living room, and he shot my husband in the head. I just called 911 on my cell phone.
Yes.
Did you get are you coming to my house?
Today, we're diving deep into the twisted tale of Rebecca Bryan, a once-respected real estate agent from Mustang, Oklahoma, who found herself at the center of a murder investigation that shocked the nation. This case has more twists and turns than a pretzel maker's workshop, so grab a snack and buckle up for a wild ride. Our story begins with Keith Bryan, a 52-year-old fire chief from Nichols Hills, Oklahoma. Keith was a stand-up guy, a real pillar of the community, and a hero to many. He had dedicated his life to saving kittens from trees and rescuing people from burning buildings, and his bravery and selflessness had earned him a shiny badge and the respect of his fellow firefighters. But on the night of September 20th, 2011, Keith's life was cut tragically short when he was shot in the head inside his own home. And who was the trigger-happy culprit? None other than his own wife, Rebecca Bryan. Talk about a plot twist. Now, I know what you're thinking. What could possibly drive a woman to murder her own husband in cold blood? Well, as we'll soon discover, Rebecca Bryan was no ordinary housewife. Behind her perfectly coiffed hair and megawatt smile lay a web of lies, deceit, and betrayal that would make even the most seasoned true crime aficionado's head spin faster than a dreidel on Hanukkah. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the case, let's take a moment to set the scene. Keith and Rebecca Bryan seemed to have it all. A beautiful home in the suburbs, successful careers, and a marriage that had lasted longer than most Hollywood romances. They had been together for 33 years, which is like a century in marriage years, and had raised two strapping young lads, Trent and Kent. From the outside looking in, the Bryans were the quintessential American family. But as we all know, appearances can be deceiving. Beneath the surface, their marriage was shakier than a Jenga tower on a bumpy road, and Rebecca had a secret that would ultimately bring the whole thing crashing down. Rewind to 2009, when Rebecca met a man named Mark Holbrook at a real estate conference. Mark was a successful businessman from Hugo, Oklahoma, and the two quickly hit it off. They began an extramarital affair that was steamier than a sauna in July, and Rebecca fell head over heels in love. But when Keith found out about the affair in January 2010, Rebecca was forced to make a choice. She could either end things with Mark and try to patch things up with Keith, or she could kick Keith to the curb and ride off into the sunset with her new beau. Rebecca, being the indecisive type, filed for divorce but then had a change of heart and decided to give Keith another chance. Fast forward to the summer of 2011, and Rebecca's behavior had become more erratic than a squirrel on caffeine. She was constantly texting and calling Mark, even though he had made it clear that he was done with her. She was also engaging in a series of sordid sexual encounters with random men, including a stranger she met at a bar in Texas and a real estate client in McLeod, Oklahoma. Talk about mixing business with pleasure. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Rebecca's behavior was her complete lack of remorse or empathy for her husband. In the days leading up to Keith's murder, she was caught on tape telling a friend that she wished he would just kick the bucket already. She even joked about hiring a hitman to take him out, which is about as funny as a root canal without anesthesia. And then on the day of the murder, Rebecca took things to a whole new level of crazy. She stopped by her real estate client's house for a quick afternoon romp before heading home to Mustang. Later that evening, she left a voicemail for Mark, declaring her undying love for him and mentioning an expected inheritance. Gee, I wonder where she thought that money was going to come from. Just a few hours later, at around 10 p.m., Rebecca called 911 to report that an intruder had broken into their home and shot Keith in the head. She claimed that the shooter was a young man in his mid-20s wearing a hooded sweatshirt and that he had apologized to her before fleeing the scene in a small, dark pickup truck. Because nothing says, "I'm sorry," like a bullet to the brain, right?
Please. I don't know, this man, this 26-year-old man with a hoodie cap on walked into our house to do our garage, and he walked into the living room. and he shot my husband in the head. I just called 911 on my cell phone.
Yes.
Did you get are you coming to my house? He turned around to me and he said, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry." He said that your husband should have hired me.
But as investigators would soon discover, Rebecca's story had more holes than a slice of Swiss cheese at a mouse convention. For starters, there was no sign of forced entry at the Bryan home, and none of the neighbors had seen or heard anything suspicious that night. It was almost as if the intruder had vanished into thin air, or maybe he was just a figment of Rebecca's imagination. Moreover, when police searched the house, they found a smorgasbord of incriminating evidence that pointed directly to Rebecca. In the laundry room, they discovered a .380 caliber Ruger pistol, a spent shell casing, a rubber glove, and a bullet-riddled blanket. The gun was later matched to a box found under Rebecca's side of the mattress, and the serial number confirmed that it was her weapon. Talk about a smoking gun! As if that wasn't damning enough, investigators also uncovered a trail of text messages and voicemails that painted a disturbing picture of Rebecca's state of mind in the days leading up to the murder. In one particularly chilling exchange, she told a friend that she was ready for Keith to go, and that she couldn't wait to collect on his life insurance policy. I guess money really can't buy happiness, but it can buy a one-way ticket to prison. Faced with a mountain of evidence, prosecutors charged Rebecca with first-degree murder and sought the death penalty.
Late breaking at 5, investigators said it wasn't an intruder, but the fire chief's own wife who shot and killed him. Keith Bryan died Wednesday after the shooting at his Mustang home. We have team coverage of the arrest. We begin with Wendell Edwards in Mustang. Wendell?
Paul, police say it all came down to evidence. You see, Becky Bryan was the only one home when she says someone came into her house and shot her husband. But police say that someone, according to the evidence, was her. She first told her story to a 911 operator. An intruder shot her husband.
I don't know, this 26-year-old man with a hoodie cap on walked into our house to do our garage, and he walked into the living room and he shot my husband in the head.
But investigators say evidence they found inside this house just didn't match. Specifically, a handgun similar to this one found in the clothes dryer in the utility room. Take a look. This is a picture from YouTube when the couple put their home up for sale earlier this year. The box the gun came in, we're told, discovered in the master bedroom, under the side of the bed where Becky Bryan slept.
Also found near the handgun box were 2 Blazer 380 auto ammunition boxes, the same brand of ammunition that was loaded inside that gun.
And take a look at this couch. Again, pictures from YouTube. Investigators found another piece of evidence here, a .380 caliber full metal projectile.
That projectile was recovered from the center cushion of the couch where Keith Bryan had been seated at the time he was shot.
Police arrested Becky Bryan without incident just past noon at this hotel in Oklahoma City.
It's a safe community. It continues to be a safe community. This was an isolated domestic incident.
She's facing a murder one charge. And obviously a very difficult time for the Bryan family. I'm told that her family, they were present at that hotel when police and authorities arrested Becky Bryan. But tonight there are still some lingering questions. What about a motive, and will police make any more arrests? I'll answer those for you when I see you again tonight at 6. Right now we're live this evening in Mustang. Wendell Edwards, Eyewitness News 5.
But in a surprising twist, Rebecca's defense team managed to convince the jury to spare her life, arguing that she had been a victim of emotional abuse and that the shooting had been an act of self-defense. I'm not sure how shooting your husband in the head while he's watching TV qualifies as self-defense, but hey, I'm not a lawyer. In the end, Rebecca was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She remains behind bars to this day, still maintaining her innocence and claiming that an intruder was responsible for Keith's death.
Rebecca Bryan was sentenced on Tuesday to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bryan was found guilty in May of killing her husband, Keith Bryan. Nichols Hills fire chief was shot to death in the couple's Mustang home back in 2011. Rebecca Bryan originally told investigators an intruder shot her husband, but detectives later found the gun and bullet casings in the couple's dryer. The items found in the home were key evidence in the case. The jury recommended a life sentence, which was upheld by Canadian County District Judge Gary Miller. Keith Bryan's colleagues, as well as the Canadian County District Attorney, spoke about the decision following today's court proceedings.
There were 12 good citizens from our county, from our community, that I agree with Mr. James did a good job. They listened intently, they paid attention, they took their charge seriously, and they rendered a verdict. And that verdict was clear, it was undeniable, unmistakable, and the judge chose to follow that, which obviously we're pleased with.
Well, it's about what I expected. My reaction is kind of the same as it was at the trial. When it was over, I didn't feel relief. There wasn't anything to be happy about. It was just a real numb feeling. It's not quite that bad today. This is what I expected. I'm just glad it's over.
It's clear that he had lived his life devoted to helping others and to saving lives, and to have his life taken in the manner that it was is such a contrast. And again, it goes back to the brutal and senseless nature of his murder.
Keith will always live on with us at the fire department. He was there for 32 years. That's a long time, and he hired, I think, half of the firefighters we have now, he hired. So his legacy will live on for a long time, and he'll never really be gone from that department.
I guess denial isn't just a river in Egypt. But for those who knew Keith Bryan, there is no doubt about what really happened that night. He was a good man, a loving husband and father, and a dedicated public servant who had devoted his life to helping others. He didn't deserve to die at the hands of the woman he had loved and trusted for more than 3 decades. And yet, as tragic as Keith's story is, it's hardly unique. Every year, thousands of men and women are murdered by their intimate partners, often in a fit of rage or jealousy. These are the silent victims of domestic violence, the ones whose stories rarely make headlines but whose lives are no less valuable or important. In the end, the story of Keith and Rebecca Bryan is a cautionary tale about the dangers of secrets, lies, and betrayal. It's a reminder that even the most seemingly perfect relationships can hide dark and twisted truths, and that the people we love and trust the most are sometimes capable of the most heinous acts imaginable. But it's also a story about the resilience of the human spirit and the power of love and forgiveness in the face of unspeakable tragedy. In the years since Keith's death, his family and friends have worked tirelessly to keep his memory alive and to find meaning and purpose in the wake of such a senseless act of violence. They have started a foundation in his name dedicated to supporting other families who have lost loved ones to domestic violence. They have spoken out about the need for better resources and support for victims of abuse, and have worked to raise awareness about the warning signs of a potentially dangerous relationship. And perhaps most importantly, they have refused to let Rebecca's actions define Keith's legacy. They remember him as the kind, generous, and loving man he was, not as the victim of a brutal and senseless crime. As we close out this episode of True Crime Legacy, I want to take a moment to honor Keith Bryan and all the other victims of domestic violence who have lost their lives at the hands of their abusers. Your stories may not always make the front pages, but your lives matter, and your memories will live on through the people who loved you. And to anyone out there who may be struggling in an abusive relationship, I want you to know that you are not alone. There is help available, and there are people who care about you and want to see you safe and happy. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for the support you need to break free from the cycle of violence and abuse. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the dark and twisted world of true crime. Until next time, stay safe out there, and remember, if you ever find yourself married to a real estate agent with a wandering eye and an itchy trigger finger, maybe it's time to start sleeping with one eye open. Just a thought.